In React, it's important to distinguish between what a re-render is and what a remount is. Essentially, React components update their output through re-renders, and they start fresh on remounts. So as a classic example of a re-render, we have a counter component right here that all that happens is when we click count, it'll just render the counter, and we can see that being logged into the console. However, if we look at the very top, we can see initializing count being printed only once, and that is being printed right inside this state function. So basically, this is only being logged once, which is when the component first mounts. So before I get more in depth into this, let's just talk about what a re-render is. So a re-render happens when a component's props or state changes. Basically, React runs the component function again, generating new JSX. So the function being this right here, when we're re-rendering, we're just running this function one more time. But it's important to note that when it is re-rendering, the same component instance remains mounted. And this means that state and lifecycle methods and hooks, so useState and useEffect, these persist. And that is why with useState, we're managing to keep the count in memory. So it's being kept in memory in this component. So when we click it again, it knows it was 11 previously and then goes up to 12. And back to this initialization right here, this is what is known as a lazy initializer function, which means it does not run again. And that is why we only see initializing count being printed once, which is at the very beginning right here. So now let me give an example of a remount instead of a re-render. And so what this is right here is we can see we have rendering app, initializing count, and rendering counter. So if we click this count button right here, we can see rendering counter being printed and the count is going up. But if we toggle and hide the counter, by say we do hide counter like this, we can see rendering app being printed, and now say show counter, we get initializing count and rendering counter, but note how the state value has been reset to 0. So it's been reset to here, causing this lazy initialization function again. So once again, we can increment, which is just re-rendering, then we hide it, it's removed from the DOM, we show it again, that is a remount. And so of course the state value has been reset. So basically, once again, a remount happens when React unmounts a component and then mounts it again. And this usually happens if you conditionally render a component. So say toggle it on and off, which is what we're doing here, which the only way we're doing this is just this little Boolean right here. So show and counter. Another way it can happen though is you change the key prop of a component. So usually basically every component in JSX has this key prop. If that changes, that can cause a remount. And then another way is if you navigate away and back in this SPA routing setup. So say just leave an about page, go back to it, something like that. And when a remount happens, a new component instance is created with fresh state and lifecycle. And this also means that lazy initializers run again, useEffect mount effects run again, and all that stuff. And so it's important to distinguish between remount and re-render because of performance. So you want to avoid unnecessary remounts to keep state and effects alive. It's also important for state persistence. So remount resets state, whereas re-renders preserve it. Then there are component side effects. So effects run again on remount. So that means use your cleanup, say useEffect cleanup functions carefully. And then once again, just keys. So changing keys forces a remount. So use keys wisely in lists and conditional rendering. I want to thank you for liking and subscribing. Check my software and courses in the description. Take it easy.